You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For 50 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Derek Fassbender.
Welcome, listeners. I'm Derek Fassbender, host of the B&H Photography Podcast. I'm also the host of our new monthly series, Next Frame, in collaboration with creative producer Jill Waterman and audio engineer Mike Weinstein. The photo world is filled with remarkable young and up-and-coming talents. They often don't get the visibility they deserve, so we created Next Frame, a new monthly series aiming to shine a light their way. In addition to sharing their creative journeys, we'll discuss their process and the gear they use, as well as get their insights on the future of our industry. These bite-sized episodes are equally inspired by the guests we speak with and the invaluable contributions of local creative arts programs that have played a key role in their development. Today's guest is Josh Nass, a Baltimore and DC-based freelance photographer and a senior at the University of Maryland College Park, where he's pursuing a bachelor's degree in information science. As a high school graduate of the Baltimore School for the Arts and a participant in Baltimore's wide-angle youth media nonprofit, he's honed his subject-based style to give each of his shoots, whether it's celebrities, musicians, athletes, or models, a unique wow factor. Josh Nass, welcome to Next Frame.
Thanks so much. That was a good intro.
I'm glad you like it. I got to call it out, man. You're our first person on this new Next Frame series that we're doing. So I want to give you a special welcome for kind of setting the tone for everybody else, all your peers.
Cool. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's not every day I get to do a podcast with such a big thing as B&H. So that's exciting.
It's exciting for us to try out this new series. You know, it's about inspiring the next generation. And one of the great ideas that we had in coming up with this series was to take the next generation so that you can inspire your own peers. So I want to get started with, how did you get into the whole photography thing to begin with?
Okay. Before college, I was competing in boxing and I was very passionate about this. And I was putting all my time towards it. But when I started college, it became pretty difficult to keep up with that, especially because most boxers don't go to college. Freshman year, I was still competing and I was doing well, but I decided to take a step back from it. I was a little burnt out and it just felt really weird for me coming out of COVID, where I didn't really see my peers that often, to living full-time on campus in a mini city of peers. That was a weird shock. So I remember just thinking I just kind of want to get a camera to just mess around with a vlog a little bit. I really didn't have any intentions of doing photography as an art or really to earn money. It was more just I'm bored. I need something else to do since I stopped boxing. So I got a camera and I was just messing around in my dorm with my roommate and my friends with my camera for a while. And then I remember I was a really big fan at the time of a Caribbean artist named Shensia. And I was thinking, if she ever came to Maryland, it would be cool if I could use my photography to meet her. And sure enough, there's a big Caribbean community in Maryland. So she had a concert here. And I just DM'd everyone I could find who was associated with the event. So I messaged the promoter and I said, hey, I'll shoot this for free. I'm young and interested and I'd love to do this. And he was like, I don't care. And then pretty much no one else responded except for one DJ. And I got him interested enough in having me just by saying I'll do it for free. So I went and I got on stage. And once I got that adrenaline rush of actually seeing someone on my phone to seeing them in real life, just by leveraging some photography skills, that was a high I wanted to get a lot. So I made a ton of content out of that concert, not just from her, but all the other performers from the evening. And I guess it was good. I think looking back, I would probably be pretty critical on it, but it was good enough to impress the promoter. And even though he had denied me originally, once he saw the work, he started inviting me to all these other Caribbean events. So that's kind of how I got into like the music photography originally. That is like probably the branch that I think is the most cool.
That's awesome. So it's like you just shot your shot
Yeah.
and it just happened to work out, which a lot of people, you think it's way more complicated, and sometimes it just involves a little bit of luck and a little bit of perseverance.
Yeah. I mean, I shot my shot 50 times just for that event. And it's not like that was a big concert. Like
Uh-huh.
Shamsia is a huge artist now. Now would be a different story, but at the time she was really only an artist with an audience in the Caribbean community,
Mhm.
which I'm not even a part of. And so the event promotion wasn't that big. I mean, it wasn't like a stadium tour. It was kind of in the middle of nowhere in Maryland. I mean, there were a lot of people there, but it shouldn't have been that hard to get. So, I mean, the first 8 people that I emailed while having zero portfolio had no interest. But I mean, when you offer to do things for free, you can usually find someone.
It's not costing them anything. So, yeah.
And that's a little tip for people, because I get that question a lot from like young photographers saying like, well, how do you get to the person or whatever? You kind of got to look for someone adjacent to them that is more reachable.
Mm.
So finding like an opening DJ who could get me a wristband is what worked in that scenario. And then it opened the eye of the promoter who had originally been uninterested in me. Looking back, he saw me as, oh, wait, this kid is actually pretty good and I can take advantage of him and get him for free if there's an artist he wants.
Mhm.
So he started doing that, which at the time I was happy about. But, it came to a point where I had to,
You got to cut off the free work.
try to figure out what I'm worth and go for that, which is something I still struggle with.
Now, you were just getting started. So were you comfortable in your own work, or were you kind of just like, you know what? I got a yes, I'm going to figure it out?
From messing around so much with my camera before I started taking photos of performers, I think I was really comfortable on the technical side of it. So I became pretty comfortable with my camera, which at the time was a Sony A6400. So I think the part that I was most nervous about going into these things was the social aspect of how am I going to make myself likable here? How am I going to act natural, like I belong in these rooms? But from messing around by going to the zoo and taking photos and going to my boxing gym and taking a lot of photos, I became pretty comfortable with the gear. So I knew I had the technical side of it. And I very quickly figured out that a lot of the older industry professionals aren't really as good technically as you expect. A lot of the time, I think the older generation is outdated either in technical ability or just the technology they use or the software they edit with. So I think I quickly figured out like, okay, I kind of have an advantage with the new strategy towards this stuff.
Mhm.
And I understood that I had a big advantage by targeting the markets that I was obsessed with. So I wasn't just doing any concerts, and I still don't. I was going for things that I'm a big fan of. And it came from like boxing too. Originally, I started photographing boxers because I knew that, okay, I have this boxing experience and I know what looks cool to the boxers. All the boxers, they want the photos because they want to look cool. And I know the techniques in boxing that if I had a photo of myself boxing, I'd be like, oh, that's a sweet photo. So it was similar when it came to the music stuff. Like, I'm a big fan of this artist for this, and this reason. They're just cool when they do this or when they perform like this. So when I was shooting, I was looking for those like cool moments. And then when I take that photo and I edit it, I would spend extra time on those photos of those cool moments and try to like bring what I think is cool out of the photo through the editing. So that just involved a lot of toying with the photos. Do I want this color, black and white? And how am I going to mask in this photo? Or
Just all those creative decisions that go into putting your vision on the paper.
Originally, I was making a classic mistake of over editing everything and thinking, more is better. And I think as I've matured, I've figured out less is more in a lot of ways when it comes to editing or organizing photos. But I was kind of just obsessed with the process of I need to get access to the artist, which is tedious. And then if I finally get a yes, I'm really excited. And then I'm like, oh crap, I need them to think I'm cool. And so that was a hard part for me is how do I make them think that I'm not an obsessed little fan? And then once I'm there, I need to nail it and be efficient and be everywhere at these events and get all these angles. And then when I get home, I need to be the first photographer to give them the photos back because I'm doing this for free. And there's a lot of photographers that are getting paid. And if I can be the person who gives them the best turnaround time and the photos are better because I have an obsessive approach to editing, then maybe it'll make a good impression. So for the first couple of years, that's what I did. I mean, I'd get home from an event at 1 a.m. and I would just get right to it until the photos were done. And sometimes I would be 7 a.m. I was just too anxious to sleep. I had to get these photos out first. Also, I knew I was doing this basically just for exposure. So if I'm going to do this for exposure, I need to get them the photos first because what if I put 12 hours of work into these photos, but someone else got the photos to them in 5 hours and they post and tag that other person? And then they're like, any other photos I receive are just extra because I already posted about this event. So it was kind of a race against time when the event ended.
That's a great point. And, you were talking about younger generation versus older generation. And that's one of the things that I think the younger generation understands better is just having the picture sooner. Now, it doesn't matter how good the pictures are. If someone gets you iPhone pictures that day, whether it's a gig, whether it's a big event, it doesn't matter. They want the pictures now and they want to post the pictures because the shelf life of a photo is way shorter.
Yeah.
You post a picture and it's okay, the novelty wears off 3 days from now. So if you take a week to get the edits, we've already posted the pictures that we got that day.
Yeah.
And now, you're competing with cell phones.
I mean, especially when it comes to event and performance photography, whether it's music or sports. I mean, celebrities or high achievers are achieving stuff every day. If they're on tour, they have a concert tomorrow. So they only want the photos from your city today, maybe tomorrow. So yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate for us as photographers because it puts a lot of pressure on us. And
definitely.
It's hard. And especially when you're new to the game, there's people who are totally consciously taking advantage of you and putting pressure on you. Where's the photos? And you're doing a good job and you're like, man, relax. But yeah, I think now it's as I'm mature, the hardest thing for me was to set boundaries, for myself, which I'm kind of a pushover and people are so terrible and
they'll take advantage of it.
Take advantage of you. And actually, if you look at my page, I haven't been doing a lot of celebrity stuff in a while because
it's a rough area to photograph.
It's super rough, especially with the financial part. I mean, I was spending more money generally.
And that's what a lot of people, well, and again, we're speaking to the younger generation, right? Because of course, when you're younger, you want to photograph the people that you idolize, that you look up to. And they don't realize what comes with it. It comes with, a lot of work for oftentimes not a lot of payback or any credit. And there's times where you do it for exposure and you end up not getting exposure and it's just a lesson learned and maybe something for your portfolio.
Yeah, about a year and a half ago, I was in New York Fashion Week for maybe my third time. For any young people being like, how do you get to New York Fashion Week? When I say I was there, I mean I was physically in New York because it was Fashion Week. No one asked me to be there. I just had a relative who lives in New York, and every time it was Fashion Week, I would just take a bus there and like freelance street hustle photos outside the shows and try to network into someone bringing me into a show or whatever. So I was just there. One of the 1,000 people I DM'd every Fashion Week hoping to get a gig responded actually like a year later from a different Fashion Week begging DM. I put a lot of time into these DMs. Like, they were well-written paragraphs. I do want to make that clear for young people. I was like handwriting these and trying to be like
You're showing intention.
as nice as possible, but not like too desperate. But anyways, a pretty popular New York artist said, "Hey, you want to come with me for Fashion Week?" And I was like, absolutely. She was best friends at the time with a A-list New York artist. And I was thinking maybe I'll get to meet her, which I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to go backstage for her show. I took one photo of her on my little point and shoot film camera because I didn't want to bother her. And I said, "How would you like to get the photo?" Because this is part of my networking routine. This is a way I got people to follow me sometimes. I'd be like, "If you follow me, you'll catch my DM." I'm just trying to be logistic. I'm young and nervous, and I was being as nice as I could be. I knew this person's about to perform, and I wasn't going to force a networking on them. And then the next year, I had a couple people who were hitting me up about Fashion Week, and this mean artist manager hit me up saying, "Hey, Josh, are you going to be in New York?" So I went with them again, even though I knew like, oh God, they're so mean, but they do get me into cool events. And I should not have done that. That was the most inhumane experience. I mean, I was there until 3 a.m. No one ever asked me how I was getting home or if I'm hungry. And I'm like at these fancy dinners with them, and they would send me to a location. And I'd be, "Okay, where are you guys?" They'd be like, "Oh, the location changed." And then I'd be metroing another way. And I was spending money on these train tickets, and they were just dragging me around everywhere. And by the way, I would finish, 3 a.m., sometimes 5 a.m. I'd sludge all the way back to my aunt's apartment in New York. And the moment I would wake up, it was, "Josh, where are the photos?" And I was shooting in RAW. So I was editing all of the photos. I mean, I was taking 600 photos a night, delivering maybe 150. I'd have these photos done in 3 to 4 hours, maybe. I feel like that's pretty quick. I would just wake up to a "where's the photos?" And then I'd deliver them, maybe a liked message on the Dropbox folder if I was lucky. And then generally a complaint later. And they were good, by the way. They were not bad. She was just very picky. So at some point I was like, I'm not even a fan of this person. I just wanted to be in these rooms. There was a point where I had to be like, okay, maybe I should only sit down at tables where I'm being welcomed. That's when I started focusing more on actually making money for myself and not just chasing cool experiences that come with 1,000 negative experiences. So right now, the main photography I've been doing is like graduation photos and less exciting stuff, but it makes money because people understand its value and no one feels entitled based off of their status for that. So I've been making more money, but maybe being a little bit less popular recently. And that's been allowing me to travel. Like last year, I studied abroad, and I'm about to go back to Spain and study Spanish in the fall. And I'm more excited about that.
So, Josh, speaking of studying, I know part of your background is you were affiliated with a creative arts nonprofit, Wide Angle Youth Media, at some point. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How'd you get involved and what you gained from that experience?
Yeah. So, Wide Angle Youth Media is awesome. And they've been around as long as I can remember in Baltimore. And my first experience with them was when I was either 14 or 15. Baltimore City has a program for 14-year-olds to get hired. My childhood best friend, his older brother, Ben, was working there and editing photos, videos, doing all sorts of stuff there. So I thought, why don't I use this program to get a job at Wide Angle? So me and Ben's little brother, Andrew, worked there for a summer. And it almost felt like a camp because we were 14, but we were getting paid. And it was really cool. It's like an intro to everything. So that's when I first touched like Photoshop and, editing software. That's when I probably first touched a camera. Me and those guys, Ben and Andrew, growing up, used to make little home videos and skits on our flip camera. So we had a joint interest in messing around with cameras and making stuff. But what is most significant to me was that's the first place that I messed with Photoshop and I did photo editing. And I remember they were just teaching us about masking, which looking back, learning about that when I was 14, but in 2016 or something is pretty cool. And then later on, that being my whole thing was like, you should hire me because I want to make you look cool.
Yeah, and the way you talked about that in terms of your post-production right away after the concert or whatever, and that you've got such confidence with that and facility that is really interesting. It's almost more important than the actual camera techniques.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly felt like that. Something I would say is definitely to invest in your gear. I mean, I've always used a pretty minimalist setup, but I've always tried to have a pretty good camera that can support that kind of editing. So when it came to something that I felt was important or like I knew I'm going to edit the crap out of, I was always shooting RAW, of course. At some point, I had a Sony A7R3, which had like a lot of megapixels. So I could do a lot of stuff with that. And now with like, the AI editing to reduce noise, you could do it a lot. But I always felt like all I need was a good camera, just a good camera. I don't need a big rig. I just need a good camera that gives me a good canvas that I could edit on. And I mean, I feel like I've always been kind of scatterbrained, which is like not always a good thing. But I think for photography, my mind was always just racing when it came to these events. Like during the event, my mind is racing of how I can get different kinds of shots and where I can get myself. And then after, my mind is under a lot more stress, but still racing on how I can make this cool. Sometimes it worked against me, but that's just part of my personality. Sometimes I can hyper focus on getting something done, and sometimes I'm looking in so many directions that I don't nail one solidly.
Yeah, one related question connected to Wide Angle. At one point, you were selected to do a promotional piece for Comcast. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Comcast, to my knowledge, reached out to Wide Angle looking for young media artists to interview. That's what I heard. They thought, okay, well, Josh did the boxing photography and he was a boxer. Maybe he would be good for this because it was for the Olympics. They wanted to interview young media people in relation to the upcoming Olympics last year. So they reached out to me and I was super excited. I thought it would be some cool publicity. And it turned out to be anything but an interview. Originally, it started like that. And I told them a little bit about my journey and how I started with Wide Angle and how it led me to the boxing photography. And then it was more of a, okay, well, we want you actually for this commercial thing. And I was kind of like auditioning without realizing I'm doing all these steps of interviews. And I was like, man, just tell me if I'm doing this or not. What do you need all these silly submissions for? And then they were like, okay, we'd like to have you for our commercial that we're shooting in Toronto. Your role is just really easy. And I was thinking, oh, for this money, that's a sweet deal. And get a free trip to Toronto. This is going to be super chill. I'm here for 5 days. They only want me to shoot for 1 day. Like, I'm chilling. And I go to my fitting on the first day and I see a room full of people dancing and they're like going hard. I'm thinking like, oh, those must be the dancers. Because they said I was in a breakdancing scene, but I'm just kind of like at the table laughing. And I'm like, wow, like they're going crazy in there. And then I try on some clothes and they take some pictures and it's all cool up until then. And then I finished the fitting and they're like, okay, now you have to go learn your choreography. And I like froze and I was like, my what? Like, what are you talking about? I'm not a dancer or an actor. And like for someone with some level of social anxiety, I'm sure a lot of people in media, photography are not used to being in front of the camera. They're usually a more quiet personality. And this was mortifying for me to hear, even though I'm sure a lot of people would kill for this experience to dance on a commercial for the Olympics. Everyone's like, snap out of it, Josh. And I'm like, okay, fine. And I went to my hotel room after and I'm thinking I am no longer chilling at all. I'm not going outside for 3 days. I'm practicing this choreography until it's okay. And so that's what I did. And then shoot day came and I got in a car at 6 a.m. and everyone's telling me to relax and it's going to be cool. And like, I'm terribly anxious, but at this point, this all feels like a dream. I was thinking, okay, I can kind of just disassociate and go through this day and shoot this stuff. Anyways, I get in the car and I pull up at 7 a.m. And as soon as the car doors open, there's a whole camera crew designated for me. And it was weird. Like, it was awesome that they were putting this focus on me as the only cast member. They flew in there but I'm thinking, like, why? I'm the only one who's not a dancer, except for the girl in the wheelchair. I'm not an actor either. I thought I was doing an interview about my photography, and now I'm whipping in front of the world. But yeah, once I sucked it up and I went through the day, I mean, I had a whole camera crew on me. They were giving me superstar treatment, which was really cool, especially going from being treated like crap. I think I just got lucky. I mean, I was told that like 50 kids auditioned and I didn't even realize I was auditioning for anything. And I just didn't know what I was getting into. But it was really cool to be on the other side and like finally get treated nicely. And I was paid well. And I didn't feel like I was really doing work. I felt like I was just being pushed on stage in the talent show or something.
And has it had any effect on your career? Has it made people remark, oh, wow, this kid's been in a video?
So the commercial itself, I wound up being in it for all of about 10 frames because I'm not a dancer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the editors were probably like, yeah, maybe let's show the kids who are doing like backflips more. So I didn't actually get a lot of screen time on it, which was perfect. I mean, for months, I was like, I couldn't even sleep well because of this. But then Comcast liked me enough to do a short film on me a couple months later, which was way more exciting for me because they sent a camera crew to Baltimore and we brought the camera crew to my boxing gym and there's a director and a script and they filled my boxing gym up with smoke and they made it all cinematic. And we went to Wide Angle Youth Media and we shot in there. And I still don't really understand what I did to deserve this, but just thanks to Wide Angle and Comcast for giving me those opportunities. And to answer your question, I will say, if anything, it gives me a nice credential that I've worked with a company like Comcast. Honestly, I don't think I've leveraged it as much as I could because for the kinds of gigs that I go for, where I'm just like shooting for rappers or like no one cares about that. But I think if I were to try to work full time for, let's say, a sports team or a more stable photography job, I think that would help me a lot. And if anything, being on camera and going through that process of fittings and scripting and seeing the behind the scenes from the other side of how a real production company puts together a commercial, that gave me an experience that you really couldn't buy. And I think that if anything boosted my confidence just to be a little less anxious. I think I like overloaded my anxiety so much throughout the process of being on camera that now I just don't care. Like nowadays, I feel like it's kind of hard for me to feel embarrassment, which is good. And that's something I've always wanted. So I think it's affected my character more than my portfolio, but I think I could leverage it.
Do you think this is something, I mean, you did the musician thing and you learned a lot of lessons from that it's not cracked up to what a lot of people think it is.
Yeah.
You've shot boxing, which is your passion, and now being involved in this video production, even though you were on the other side of the camera, it still exposes you to that world, and you get to see a new genre in the creative industry and something that involves work that is completely different than what you had been doing. Did any of these things shape what you think you want to do in the future? Like working on that video production, did that make you say, you know what, I might want to work in commercial video production?
Well, let me think for a second. I mean, the video production opened my eyes to like, okay, if you really want to make money in media and be a professional and do this full time, you're gonna have to do professional work. It can't always be all cool and popular stuff. You're gonna have to work for corporations or big organizations. And that can be cool. I mean, if you're working for one of these organizations, you're gonna get some boring jobs, but you're gonna get some cool stuff. And that's worth it. My problem is I'm too adrenaline seeking that I don't really make the commitment to like, okay, I'll do anything. And I think I move too fast. I just want to enjoy everything I do. And I think if you want to make a living doing this, you can expect that. Which is why I think recently I've kind of come around to that maybe I don't want to be a full-time photographer.
Interesting.
I'd rather do it just enough to make just enough money to live the life I want, which I don't really know exactly what it is yet. And I'm definitely not making that kind of money yet.
Do you think you would want to pursue what you're going to school for and just kind of keep photography as something that you can still do gig work on the side? You can still do your passion projects?
I think what I'm going to school for, I mean, if you really ask me, I would tell you not at all. Like, I didn't even want to go to school. I just wanted a box. But now that I'm at the end of my education, I'm giving it a shot. I mean, I'm doing an internship now that I hope can maybe give me the qualifications. Maybe I can mix some of my qualifications with the media stuff to work in the tech world. I mean, I hate coding. But one thing I've figured out is I do like marketing. And I think I learned a lot about marketing through all my photography. Like, of course, I learned the camera skills. I learned the networking skills.
Mm-hmm.
But your main role as a photographer, especially with talent and famous people, I thought I was just making them look cool, but I'm making them money. I'm marketing them for their next tour, for their current tour.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back, I've learned a thing or two about how to get users' attention online. And I do think there's an avenue where, like, hopefully I can find some kind of job that intrigues me, where I can use my marketing skills mixed with my technology education to bring value to some company that will pay me to do that. I haven't had luck yet. I mean, I'm about to graduate, so the search hasn't really started.
You got time.
But yeah, like that's what I'm hoping I can do. I can make a living being a wedding photographer if I did that full time. But photography is honestly very stressful, especially when you're doing those gigs like weddings. Then you always got a bride freaking out. So I think my current plan, I want to move to Spain for the short future. And I'm not permitted to work there. But I think my plan is I'm going to come home every year and do graduation photos. And that makes a lot of money. For the young people out there, go to your state college, start networking, and start doing graduation photos and troubleshoot that stuff. And then, I mean, I have exploded. My clientele at University of Maryland is like infinite now. It really is. From the sorority pipeline of referrals. This year I did like 150 students for graduation photos. Every year more people ask. And that makes a lot of money. So I did that this year, which allowed me to save up. I'm about to go to Spain. And then I've set up my visa that I will come back to America right when it's graduation photo season again. And I'm going to do it again. And I just did my first wedding recently, and that was a good experience, but stressful. So my plan now is I want to get a job in my industry, at least to try it, give it a shot. And on the side, do some photography to make some money. The thing is, I haven't made time for the cool photography recently, and I really want to. It's just, as I'm getting older and I actually have like some financial responsibilities, I find it hard to beg for roles that aren't even going to pay me. So things are starting to get a little more real for me. So I don't really know exactly where I'm going, but I've always just wanted to do what I want to do. And that's a blessing and a curse because I've always been happy with what I've got going on. But like, for example, right now, a lot of my friends are graduating and they're just getting good jobs and they're like going into a stable lifestyle. And I'm not. That's just like the path I'm taking. And I'm hoping that it will stabilize in a place that I'll be extra happy with because I let myself have that freedom.
We'll have to see where it goes. And I know you dropped a lot of gems for your peers and people who are looking to get into the industry. But if you had to boil it down to one thing that you've learned, particularly aimed at younger photographers, the people who think they might want to get into the field, what's the biggest thing you've learned so far in your career?
I think the biggest thing that I've figured out that I'm very passionate about when I talk to like young boxers in my gym who want to start photography. When I came into this, I think I was very like insecure in a lot of ways, which is not good, but it did benefit me a lot because I never overvalued my work. Like when it comes to the making money side of this, that was my last priority. And when I started, I never charged for anything. And I really built up the skills doing that. And it got to a point where like I was way too good at certain things to be doing them for free for no reason. But when you first start out, you should really just be focused on building your skills and making cool stuff. And when it came to my first big gig that was paid, which was for Keke Palmer, that was super lucky. I had been shooting this club for this promoter, not making a lot of money. And Keke Palmer asked them if they knew a DC photographer, and he just recommended me. I don't even think I had worked for him yet. He had just met me and took a liking or something. And I talked to Keke Palmer's mom for a while, trying to get this gig secured. And it was super stressful because I'm like, oh my God, this is the first time a celebrity is coming to me. And it's a big one. And they want to actually pay me for like a whole marketing campaign. It was for a festival performance and the screening of her film. It was like a whole weekend gig with Keke Palmer. And I was super excited and I really wanted to get it. So me and my friend Ben, the same Ben I mentioned earlier, I brought him in because I'm thinking like I need an industry professional and Wide Angle has trained Ben to be that. So we wrote up some really good proposals. You have to be good at writing for this gig, honestly. You need to be able to sell yourself. And we did that, and then we got the gig. And this is where it gets tricky. We need a little more help. And Ben brought in his buddy. And I had a buddy who I went to high school with. He was a really talented guy in all kinds of arts, really funny, super charismatic. And he had recently started videography. This was more of a video gig, but he was doing everything. And he was really blowing me away with how fast he was growing on social media. The previews he was posting seemed really good. And I was thinking like, wow, he's learning quick. Let's bring him in for this gig because we need a little extra help. I mean, as much as I love him, and he has grown since then tenfold, at the time, he didn't really have the professionalism nailed down of being on time, being responsive, and then having all his gear charged and ready. And it was stressful. And I ended up talking to Keke's management, and her manager said, just let him go from the gig and pay him the money. And I did that. And it was something I felt very guilty about. I felt like I was leaving someone behind. But that was kind of the consequence of someone being ahead of their work. And I always felt like I stayed behind my work. I never charged until I knew I was prepared for this gig. I never wanted to make it seem like I was better than I was. And this friend of mine, his presentation was amazing, but I wasn't aware of his actual skill level and technical ability when I brought him into the gig. And it kind of crashed and burned on me when it came to crunch time. And so that's my advice for the young people. Stay behind your work in terms of how far you're trying to go with it. It's easy to get a big ego when you start working with cool people. And I definitely went through that phase. And it was short lived. Like, you get humbled very quickly, but never charge more than what you think you're worth. I mean, there's gigs I would turn down now. If I was like, oh no, I would blow that. Like, you should always jump for opportunities for sure. But there has to be a limit to where you're like, okay, I'll go for it. I'll give it a shot. I'll try my best, but I'm not going to charge for that kind of thing. And I think a lot of kids make the mistake. They get a camera and they're immediately charging people, but then they're making exporting mistakes. And now they've got a bad rep with their clientele because I thought I was going to get this product and it ended up being not as good as I thought, or it took longer than I thought, or, oh, they sent me a file format I couldn't download. Like, you've got to make all those mistakes and get out all those kinks before you start shooting too high. And I know that's like some cliche advice, but I'm trying to explain it's a little deeper than just doing it for free.
Definitely.
Be humble about your work and know your limits, but still, try to expand them slowly.
That's some great nuanced advice. Is there any projects you're working on now where you're dedicating your creative time to?
Well, right now I have nothing super exciting in terms of celebrities or anything like that going on. As I said, I've just been traveling a lot. And when I travel, I keep 3 cameras on me, which are a Fujifilm X100V, which is a really good,
Nice.
little fun, like, travel camera that's small. And I keep a little point and shoot film camera. And I keep a $50 eBay buy, which is like a little handy camcorder. I think it's Panasonic. It's super cheap, but it's tiny, which is cool. And yeah, in the last year, I had saved up a lot of money from graduation photos. I went to South Africa and Ethiopia and Morocco and Kenya and all over Europe. And I met a girl in Madrid and we're dating, and I went to Poland last week, and I always vlog on my little camcorder. And I think, like, in 10 years, I'm going to have such a cool video I can make. That's just what I think about, is like, I'm in a long distance relationship and I record all these hellos and goodbyes, but all these experiences in different countries together. And I'm thinking long term right now about recording stuff and documenting stuff for my future. I just want to have big memory books full of cool stuff.
Awesome. Well, Josh, it's been great talking with you, getting to hear some of the stories and the advice that I think is so valuable, and trying to save people the trouble of going through it on their own if they could just listen to the advice of someone else. Now, where can we learn more about your work?
Well, you can go to my Instagram, which is Josh Nass Photo. And you can look at all my old stuff, because I'm not very good at updating my work, but I do plan on posting some really cool photos from Ethiopia soon that I just took on the street. You can also go to my website, joshnassphotography.com, but the Instagram is where I do post all the coolest stuff.
Awesome. Well, Josh, I want to thank you again for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is super cool. And all my roommates moved out of my apartment, so I haven't spoken in like 2 days. So I think you can tell I let it go on you guys. So.
Love it. Glad we could give you the platform for that. A huge thank you, of course, to Josh again, and to all of our listeners out there. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you are a fan of the show but are not yet a subscriber, head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, B&H's YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcasts, and click subscribe. You can also find us on the Explorer blog, where we post photos from our guests along with our show notes. And please join us on Facebook at the B&H Photography Podcast group, where you can share your favorite photos and comment about the show. I'm your host, Derek Fosbender. Jill Waterman is our creative producer. Episodes are recorded, mixed, and edited by technical producer Mike Weinstein, and our executive producer is Richard Stevens. On behalf of us all, thank you so much for tuning in today.